AITA for going on a second date with the girl my friend set me up with as a prank? I guess I should start by saying that I'm 28M, a medical resident. For anyone unfamiliar with what that means, let me explain. Being a resident is more like running a marathon, where the finish line keeps moving further and further away. My life is work, then sleep, whenever I'm lucky enough to grab it, then more work. If you're thinking, wow, that sounds exhausting, trust me, it is. It feels like I've been living in a perpetual state of sleep deprivation, surviving on coffee, and bouncing from one patient to the next. So yes, socializing, dating, all of that kind of fell by the wayside a long time ago. I tried to date a bit before med school, but honestly, juggling that with the workload was nearly impossible. It didn't help that I've always found social situations kind of tricky. I was diagnosed with autism a couple of years ago, and while that helped explain a lot of things about why I felt like I was constantly acting in social situations, it didn't make it any easier. Dating in particular was exhausting. The masking, the constant effort to blend in and make sure I didn't say or do the wrong thing was draining. After a while, I just stopped trying. My focus shifted to my work, where, thankfully, things are more predictable. Medicine is hard, sure, but people are unpredictable. My friends, also in med school, have been nagging me for a while now to get out more. Every time we'd grab drinks, which was rare considering our schedules, they'd make comments like, "Dude, you need to take a break," or "You're going to burn out if you don't start living a little." At first, I just shrugged it off. I mean, I know they meant well, but they didn't get it. They didn't understand that the little energy I had left after work wasn't something I wanted to spend awkwardly trying to connect with someone on a date. I get that they were concerned, but it started to feel like they were pushing me into something I wasn't ready for. This went on for months. It became a running joke, how I was the workaholic robot who didn't know how to have fun anymore. To be honest, I started to get a little defensive about it. Yes, my life is mostly work right now, but that's what I signed up for, right? Being a doctor isn't exactly a 9 to 5 job, especially during residency. I just figured they didn't understand. Eventually, they took matters into their own hands. A few weeks ago, my friends informed me they had set me up on a blind date. I was pretty resistant at first. Blind dates aren't exactly in my comfort zone. I kept thinking, what if the conversation is awkward? What if I don't know what to say? What if I end up making a bad impression because I'm too tired to mask properly? But they kept pushing. "We found the perfect girl for you," one of my friends said. "She's exactly your type." I raised an eyebrow at that because, to be honest, I don't even know what my type is anymore. It's not like I'd had the luxury of figuring that out in recent years. But they were adamant. They kept saying how great this girl was and how they were sure we'd hit it off. After a while, I started to feel like I couldn't keep saying no, especially when they had put in the effort to arrange the whole thing. So, I reluctantly agreed. I told myself that even if the date was a disaster, at least I could say I tried. And who knows? Maybe I'd get a decent meal out of it. The night of the date arrived, and I was more nervous than I expected. The restaurant was a nice one, a little fancier than I usually go to, but I figured my friends were trying to set the mood. I showed up early, as I tend to do. Being late stresses me out, and grabbed a drink while I waited for her to arrive. I kept replaying scenarios in my head, mentally preparing for every possible awkward moment that might come up. Then Emily, 26F, walked in, and right away, I realized she wasn't exactly what I expected based on my friend's description. Don't get me wrong, she was cute, really cute, but she wasn't the type my friends usually thought I'd be into. She was a bit chubby, with this big smile that made her whole face light up. Her hair was curly and wild, and she had a casual, approachable vibe that immediately put me at ease. I stood up to greet her, and she smiled even bigger when she saw me. We started talking, and I was surprised at how quickly the conversation flowed. Emily wasn't shy or reserved. She was confident and fun. She's studying geology, which at first I thought would be the most boring topic ever. I mean rocks. But when she started talking about volcanic formations, lava flows, and how much she loved getting out into the field to study them, I couldn't help but get interested. Her passion for it was contagious. And before I knew it, I was asking questions, learning more about geology than I ever thought I would. But the best part of the evening wasn't the rock talk. It was how easy it all felt. As the night went on, we discovered that we had more in common than I ever would have guessed. Turns out we're both autistic. She was diagnosed later in life, like me, and we both had stories about how we'd spent years masking in social situations, trying to blend in and avoid standing out. We laughed about how exhausting it is to constantly pretend to be something we're not, and how we both found certain social norms absolutely baffling. It was such a relief to talk to someone who got it, who didn't need me to put on an act. By the end of the night, I was genuinely having a great time. I hadn't expected to feel so relaxed on a date. Usually, I'm on edge trying to figure out the right thing to say or do. But with Emily, it just felt natural. I didn't have to force anything. We exchanged numbers, and as I walked back to my car, I couldn't help but smile. It had been a while since I felt that excited about meeting someone. A few days passed, and Emily and I had been texting pretty regularly. It was fun. Our conversations ranged from her fieldwork to random facts about medical oddities I'd encountered at work. We shared memes, talked about our favorite TV shows, and even bonded over our mutual love of weirdly specific trivia. Then, out of the blue, I got a message from her that stopped me in my tracks. She apologized if she wasn't what I expected and said she understood if I didn't want to keep talking. She seemed really down, which was completely different from the playful tone we'd had going back and forth. I asked her what was going on, and that's when she told me. My friends had set up the date as a prank. They picked her specifically because they thought she wasn't my type. They thought it would be funny to see how I'd react to going on a date with someone they didn't consider conventionally attractive. Apparently, after the date, they told her the whole thing, laughing like it was the funniest joke ever. They even described it to her as a social experiment, just to see how I'd handle the situation. Emily was hurt, understandably so. She thought I'd been in on the joke, and she was worried that I was only texting her out of pity. I was furious. Not at her, obviously, and my friends. I couldn't believe they'd do something like that. How could they treat someone, especially someone as kind and interesting as Emily, like she was just part of a joke? I immediately called her to explain. I told her I had no idea what my friends were planning and that I genuinely enjoyed our date. I apologized for what they'd done and reassured her that I wasn't texting her out of pity. I liked her. We had a connection. She was hesitant at first, understandably, but after we talked for a while, she seemed to believe me. By the end of the conversation, I asked her if she'd be willing to go on another date with me. This time, for real, without any pranks or games involved. To my relief, she said yes. Here's where things get really frustrating. When I told my friends about the second date, they were shocked. They couldn't believe I was taking it seriously. They said I'd ruined the joke and that I was overreacting. One of them even said, "You're only going out with her again because you feel guilty." I tried to explain that I actually liked Emily, that the date went well, and that I wanted to see her again. But they wouldn't let it go. They kept saying it was just harmless fun, that I didn't get the joke because of my autism, and that I was making something out of nothing. It hit hard. I've had people use my autism as an excuse before, but hearing it from my friends?